All right, you guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. A little bit of a rainy afternoon today, but we're gonna go for a drive in the 2024 Mazda CX-50. So this is a quick drive, POV drive for you guys today. There are a few changes for the 2024 model year. If you haven't seen my full review of the CX-50 when it first came out, the link is in the description. That's a lot more in depth. I go through all the changes. A lot of the stuff hasn't changed. Of course, we still have the 2.5 liter inline-4 turbo under the hood. The one we're looking at today is the GT model, so 256 horsepower, 320 pound-feet of torque, which is just awesome when you do throw in 93 octane. It's one of my favorite things, like for the price, about 42,000 Canadian as it sits right here, especially when compared to some of the other competition. I drove the Bronco Sport, not nearly as much power and torque. And of course, with the turbo engine, you are able to tow, if this was spec'd with the hitch on the back here, which it isn't, you can tow up to 3,500 pounds, which is huge, by the way, as I pointed out in the other video. Yes, fake fence back here. But let's go for a drive because they've updated a few key driving characteristics that make the CX-50, hopefully, when these changes are implemented, a better driving vehicle. So this is kind of just a return to the vehicle to refresh my memory and see if the changes they're about to implement are warranted, if I feel like the upcoming model deserves a few of the updates and tweaks. So let's go for a drive. Yeah, so as far as compact SUVs go, the CX-50 is one of my favorites, if not my favorite, especially for the price, like I mentioned. Of course, with the GT model here,
be safe if you lock everything.
Oh, that's a podcast. We'll shut that off. With the GT model here, we do get leather trim surfaces. We get a leather steering wheel that's heated, of course. I love the leather that Mazda uses on the steering wheel here. It's a nice thin steering wheel too. Good stitching, but just a good grasp on the road overall. So yeah, the 2.5 turbo is still paired, of course, with the 6-speed automatic. Of course, it is 3 inches wider than the CX-5. It's got 1 inch more ground clearance, but the entire vehicle is actually a little bit shorter, so you do get a little bit less headroom in the back there. But main changes, as we're about to come on one of my favorite little bumpy sections here to demonstrate one of the changes. Now they're about to retune the suspension. Now the reason why I'm not talking in present tense is because the one I'm driving today is a 2024 model, but the changes are not being implemented until next month. Retuned dampers, what they're effectively doing with that is to make the smaller bumps here on the road appear less through my spine, through my hands, make them less noticeable, make the vehicle just more comfortable overall. And then once we get off pavement, which I did in my last video, just a little bit on the rocks and whatnot, on the gravel, to make those bigger bumps softer, but not only that, just make the ride more control, keep the vehicle and body under control a little bit more on those bigger bumps. What that tells me, what Mazda's kind of saying there is, hey, we made it a little bit too stiff overall, which when I initially drove the CX-50, I didn't think that was the case. I actually thought, having driven the CX-5 maybe a year before I stepped into this, that it felt a little bit softer. But this week, as I've been driving, I had a few people in the car as well, more than one comment over smaller bumps being like, wow, it's a stiff ride, which I can see, but after having gotten into the car again this time around, I think it's great. There's a lot of feedback that comes through the road. Now, daily driving, absolutely, it is on the stiffer side, especially when compared to the competition. People who do not want to be at one with the road, they want to be isolated, especially just going in a straight line. That brings me to the second change, steering. They have decreased the steering damping here, which basically just means, especially on an off-road kind of catered vehicle life like this, that you can take camping, you can take on a weekend adventure if you want, allows more road feel to come through without compromising the ability to have comfort when you are daily driving the vehicle on a road like this. Second to that, they're changing how much power assist we get. So on center, they're decreasing the amount of assist, which means it should be a little bit heavier. I've always loved the steering in the CX-50. It's very precise. Most Mazda products are, including the 3 Turbo when it was new. It's easy steering. It's a little less twitchy, I would say, than maybe something you would get from Acura or Honda, but it's by no means lazy. So just by making that on center a little bit heavier, making your inputs more noticeable, you get more feedback back to you. And then once you're in the corner, off center, what they're doing, they're gonna be increasing the steering assist. So I guess a lot of people that bought the CX-50 were complaining or just noted maybe that the steering was a little bit heavy. Again, from an enthusiast perspective, driving it again, I love it. I think it is pretty great. Now the decrease in assist on center, that could be welcome. But the increase in assist once you're in the corners, I don't really, again, I'd have to wait and drive them back to back, but here driving the old one or the pre-update, still a 2024, it is heavier, but the Mazda steering is very, like I said, smooth. It's very forgiving, incredibly forgiving in combination with the brake-based torque vectoring that's going on. If you really begin to push the car, these cars just are so smooth out of the box and do a lot of work behind the scenes that makes you not, you don't have to think about really the handling of the vehicle and the behavior in the corners with the CX-50. It does most of the work for you and feels, even though it does have 1 inch more ground clearance than the CX-50, it feels hunkered down. I think this is one of the best handling and confidence inspiring compact SUVs that I've personally driven. Another change, actually, I almost forgot to mention, the brake booster. They're changing out the brake booster to give a more firm and communicative feel there, a little bit more precise. Now, I think the braking feels fine here, but again, a little bit more firm to kind of match the tone of the ride. Now, one thing to note when it comes to the, I guess both the steering damping and the suspension changes especially, are these tires. So we're sitting on 20-inch wheels here, which probably contributes to the fact that it's a little bit stiffer than you might want from a daily driven SUV like this. They're a little bit too big. Now, of course, you can get either the base model, which has 17s, or the Meridian edition, which adds some cosmetic stuff, but also gets 18s made specifically for off-roading, because they know that more tire, more sidewall is just more forgiving off-roading, and you have more air in the tires to kind of play with there. And I think that's a huge asset. So they're kind of riding that line with the CX-50 between on-road and off-road capabilities. Yeah, I think the softer suspension will help in both scenarios, but it will maybe take a little bit away from the on-pavement, curvy back road handling characteristics. Maybe a little bit, but I'd have to see. Anyways, you guys, this has been the 2024 CX-50. I just wanted to get behind the wheel once again and kind of refresh my memory on this, because whenever the general consensus maybe of the buyers or clients of Mazda buying this is different from mine, I always kind of just want to see if maybe I was wrong. But again, I think the steering's pretty much perfect here. Brakes, yeah, sure, it could use a little bit more on top of the pedal, especially feel there to get a little bit more precise. But the steering I love, and sure, the smaller bumps especially could be smoothed out. But again, how that's going to affect the overall handling of the vehicle in the corners, I have yet to see. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Find me on Instagram, subscribe if you haven't already, all the usual stuff, you guys know it already. I recently drove the new Audi RS3 down in Vegas. You can check that out. We'll see you soon.